Matapos ang kanyang naging kampanya sa Miami Open, muling magbabalik aksyon ang Filipina tennis ace si Alex Eala sa Linz Open sa Austria. Ang kanyang unang torneo sa clay court ngayong season. Matatandaang nagtapos sa isang round of 16 exit ang kampanya ni Eala sa kanyang muling pagsalang.
Alex Eala had not played a single match in Austria yet. She had not even dropped her bags at the hotel. But the moment she stepped into that airport, Philippine flags appeared, cameras pushed forward from every direction, and the crowd was louder than most tennis players ever hear, even after winning a tournament. The WTA was paying attention. And truthfully, some people inside that organization probably felt uneasy about it. So, do you think Alex Eala can make a real run on clay this season, or is it still too soon to say? Leave your answer in the comments right now. Let's start with what actually happened at that airport, because the footage tells a story that no ranking number can explain on its own. March 25th and 26th, Linz, Austria. Alex Eala walks into the arrivals hall and is immediately surrounded by a sea of Philippine flags, cameras packed 2 and 3 rows deep, and fans calling her name loud enough to fill a space that was never designed for that kind of crowd. She had not yet hit a single ball on Austrian ground. The draw had not been announced. The tournament was not scheduled to begin until April 6th. And still, the reception she received looked like something reserved for champions returning home after a title. It felt like a city that had already made up its mind about her before she had done anything to prove it on that soil. That is not something you normally see in tennis. That is simply not how this sport operates. Tennis typically rewards you after the fact. You win the match, and then the crowd reacts. You beat the top seed, and then the cameras find you. You hold up the trophy, and then the headlines come. The sequence almost never changes. Performance first, recognition second. What happened in Linz turned that completely around. The recognition arrived before the opening serve. The atmosphere told her she mattered before a single point was played. And that shift, that change in the natural order of things, is exactly why this story deserves serious attention. She walked into that airport ranked 29th in the world, which is already an extraordinary position for a 20-year-old. But the people holding those flags were not reacting to a number on a rankings list. They were reacting to everything she has come to represent over the last several months. A name that arrives before she does. A player whose presence changes the energy of any event she enters. And a story that has clearly moved past the usual ways this sport introduces new talent to the world. Now, let's be honest about where she was coming from, because the complete picture matters here. Just days before those airport videos began spreading, Eala had walked off the court in Miami following a 0-6, 2-6 loss to Karolina Muchova in the round of 16. That is a difficult scoreline by any measure. No sets won, very few games. The kind of result that can take a solid week and leave it feeling like it fell apart at the end, and leave a player questioning everything she had built over the previous 2 matches. It was a hard afternoon. But here is the thing. The 2 matches that came before that loss were not minor results. On March 19th, she fought through a 3-set match against Laura Siegemund, winning 6-7, 6-3, 6-3. On March 21st, she defeated Magdalena Frech 6-3, 7-6. 2 wins in Miami at that level, against those opponents, that is a genuinely solid week of tennis. The Muchova loss stung, but it did not cancel out what came before it. And Eala knew that. After the loss, she said she left the court a little disappointed, which is completely understandable, but that she was overall very happy with how she performed that week. She also said Miami would always hold a special place in her heart, her first sunshine double, as she called it. That is the voice of someone who can take a painful ending and not let it rewrite the entire story. She held on to what mattered, set the rest aside, and turned her focus toward Austria. That kind of response deserves more credit than it usually gets. Plenty of players at 20 years old carry a bad loss into the following week. The score lingers in practice. The confidence quietly drops and shows up again in the tight moments. Eala moved on from Miami in a way that was noticeably clear and focused. She reset, confirmed her plans, and a few days later she was standing in an Austrian arrivals hall surrounded by flags. The Miami run also came with important context. Before it, she had put together strong results in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, then a breakthrough stretch in Indian Wells, and then the round of 16 in Miami. The path across the first months of 2026 has been steady in a way that is hard to overlook. Different cities, different draws, different conditions, and the results keep pointing in the same direction. That is not a hot streak. That is a player learning how to perform at a higher level and finding ways to stay there. Which makes Linz a very interesting next chapter. The Upper Austria Ladies Linz runs from April 6th to 12th at the Design Center. The 2026 edition marks the first time in the tournament's history that it is being played on indoor clay. The event has been held on indoor hardcourt since 1987. This year it made the switch to clay, which means every player who shows up is dealing with a surface that is new to them in this setting. Not just the players, but the tournament itself is figuring out what it looks like in this new format. Eala enters as one of the highest-ranked names in a 28-player field. The draw was expected around April 3rd. So she arrives as a top presence at a clay event that is itself working through a new identity. For a player who has been building her game on hardcourt and is now stepping into her clay season, Linz is a first in several ways at once. First WTA 500 clay event. First time competing on indoor clay at this level. First real test of whether what she has developed on hard courts carries over when the bounce slows down and the surface asks for a different kind of patience. That is a real question. It would be dishonest to pretend it is not. The losses to Linda Noskova in Indian Wells and to Muchova in Miami were both on hardcourt, and both were fairly one-sided. Stepping into a clay environment at this level brings genuine uncertainty with it. Indoor clay is a different experience. The ball feels heavier coming through. Movement patterns shift. Some players who are comfortable on hard court find it difficult to settle into a rhythm when the pace drops and rallies get longer. That is a fair thing to consider. But that question is precisely why the airport scene carries so much weight. The people who traveled to Linz, waited in the arrivals area, brought flags from the Philippines, and cheered for a 20-year-old tennis player before she had touched a single ball on Austrian soil. They were not reacting to a surface type or a projected first-round opponent. They were reacting to what she represents. And that kind of support does not just feel good in the moment. It changes what is possible. It creates an atmosphere that opponents have to walk into without having on their side. It means she is never playing in a quiet room, even when the crowd is divided. That is real protection. Genuine armor. And the man who understands her game better than almost anyone has been very direct about what this stage demands. Joan Bosch is Eala's traveling coach. He has been with her throughout this rise, guiding her development through the wins and the difficult losses, building the habits that have brought her to world number 29 at age 20. And his standard for what comes next is not soft. He has said plainly, "We cannot stay at the same level." That is not a motivational phrase for an interview. That is a coach telling his player that comfort is where progress stops, and that every new stage of a career asks for a new version of the person stepping onto the court. Indoor clay at a WTA 500 is exactly the kind of new stage he is describing. It is not asking her to be perfect right away. It is asking her to compete, to adjust, to handle the first uncomfortable moments of an unfamiliar surface with the same steady head she showed coming out of Miami. And if the airport was any signal, the belief surrounding her is not softening. It is growing. The question now is whether she can back that belief with results, because belief and results need to start reinforcing each other. Right now, the belief is loud and visible and real. The results have been trending in the right direction, but there has not yet been one defining moment on the biggest stage. The week where everything lines up and the performance finally matches the energy that follows her everywhere she goes. Linz might not be that week. Or it could be exactly that week. Indoor clay, a brand new format, one of the top seeds in the field, a crowd that already knew her name before her first serve. Everything is in place. Here is what a win in the opening round at Linz actually does to the bigger picture. Not a final, not a title run, just a composed, professional first-round win on this new surface. It immediately puts an end to the "can she handle clay" conversation before it even fully develops. It positions her as a player who can shift between surfaces without losing her form. It tells everyone else in the draw that the player from the airport is not just a compelling story. She is a real challenge to prepare for. And the road beyond Linz only gets larger. The European clay season runs through some of the most important events on the calendar: Madrid, Rome, and eventually Roland Garros. If she builds confidence in Austria and brings it forward through the swing, The clay season could be the stretch of the year where her ranking takes another meaningful step up. But before Madrid or Paris become part of the conversation, Linz is the test that shows she can arrive in a new environment, carry the weight of expectation, and deliver. The scene at that airport was one of the most striking images the sport has produced in a long time. Not because airports are dramatic places, but because of what it revealed about where this player stands right now. She is 20 years old, ranked 29th in the world, and fans are making trips just to wave flags in a European arrivals hall before she has set foot on the court. The WTA has a large number of players. Very few of them produce that kind of moment. Some people inside the sport have been watching her rise with genuine admiration. Others have been watching it with something that looks more like discomfort. Because when a player starts drawing this kind of attention, not after a Grand Slam, not after a year-end championship, but in the middle of a season at age 20, it begins to shift how the sports spotlight is shared. And that kind of shift is never easy for the people who were comfortable with the way things were. The WTA has been looking for new faces to carry the sport into the future for some time. The players who dominated an earlier era are either retired or approaching the end of their careers. New stars have come through, but genuine star power that crosses borders and brings entirely new audiences to the sport, that is rare. What Eala represents for the Philippines, for Southeast Asia, for every fan who sees something of themselves in someone who does not fit the traditional image of a tennis star, that goes beyond rankings and match results. It is the beginning of a different kind of reach for the sport as a whole. And the WTA knows it. The tournaments know it. The broadcasters know it. The players who walked into Linz and saw those airport videos on their phones know it too, whether they say so out loud or not. The clay season is open. The draw is set. The court is ready. And Eala walked into Austria with flags at her back and a coach who will not allow her to stay where she is. Whatever happens in the first round, the second round, or further down the draw, nobody inside that building is going to treat her as just another name on the entry list. The airport already answered that. Eala walked into an Austrian airport and received a welcome that most players spend their entire careers hoping for and never see. She had not played a point in Linz yet, and the building already knew who she was. The clay season is just getting started. Hit that like button, subscribe, and keep watching, because this story is only going to get bigger.